Okay, fine. So, what does the janitor say when they jump out of the closet? Supplies! Okay. So, the way this is going to work is, first I'm going to just talk a bit about myself, but I'm really kind of bored about this slide because I constantly have to do this, so just look me up if interested. Like, my name is practically on every slide, so we'll just kind of go through it. The only thing I will do say is that years ago, I did some work, well, I worked for University of Cambridge, and there were some Chinese people who wanted to do like a summer school thing at Cambridge, and they wanted to prop themselves up by us who were working there. And so they said, can you do like a presentation for yourself? And I made a bunch of shit up, and they posted all of that online. But one thing that they also did was, they put my picture on, on their presentation page, and there was some text. And when I translated it from Japanese, it just said, Mr. Big Data. And I've never worked with big data in my life. So this is a talk about me being like slightly flabbergasted, like trying to find my way in the world of security. It will become apparent soon what I mean. It's like there's a constant feeling, for those of you who do work in security, you know that there is, every once in a while, there's a feeling if you're slightly, you know you're the only sane person in the room, and everybody acts as if you're insane, okay? And to illustrate my point, so for those of you who don't know, I was, in my undergrad years, I was educated to work as an educator in juvenile homes. So when I was in my undergrad years, I used to work in a like home facility for kids. And there was one particular kid who was like, he had about 400 offenses, like grievous bodily harm, like, beating people with steel pipes and whatever. And he was the gentlest person I knew. I mean, literally. He was really a kind guy, who kind of got way late in some ways. But he decided to kind of give back to the community. He was one of the inmates, so to speak. And so he organized like a weekend retreat for kids from a juvenile home. And he asked me to come with. And so I was roped into this, and I said, okay, fine. So what happens is that I'm like 22 years old or so, and I find myself somewhere like in the middle of nowhere, like somewhere in like a log cabin in the woods with like 15, 16 to 19-year-olds who all have emotional difficulties, and it's the middle of a winter. And there's 3 responsible adults, if I count myself as a responsible adult at that point in time in that room. So there's Andrei, the skinhead who dropped me into it, and there's this church, like priest guy who is like the representative of this organization. He's like a wet sponge. Basically like no authority figure whatsoever. So it's just us. And there's one point in time I walk into like the single, big room where everybody is, and there's like this this stove, like wood stove, that's kind of producing heat. It's the middle of the winter, and it's literally red hot. The stove is really hot, and there's a unopened can of Coca-Cola on it. And I'm looking at this and figure, this is going to explode. Very soon. And people will be hurt. So, I grab the can, I remove it, and all the kids there, like the emotionally disturbed kids are kind of like, what are you doing? And I'm like, well, I'm removing the can. And they're like, well, I like my Coke hot. What's wrong with you? And I'm like, dude, you're going to be hurt. And they're like, no, just leave it be. What's wrong with you? And I kind of felt like I was insane. I kind of felt like, look, am I the only person who sees how dangerous this is? And of course, they were kind of pushing me. And then, this thing continues. But that's the point of my story. I come back, and my mother at the time was, she was an educator in a juvenile home. And, I come back, and, from this retreat, and my mother's like, so, how did it go? And I said to her, well, I felt, I was unsettled. I said, I kind of felt like it was so hard for me to keep saying to myself, I'm sane. I'm the only person who's sane here. I mean, they are insane, it's not me. And my mother kind of just looked at me and she said, you know what's the easiest thing here is just to give in. Just agree that you're insane. But you have the power to make things happen. So it doesn't really matter who's right. I mean, you can force these kids to do what you want because, I mean, you have institutionalized power behind you. So just stop fighting the wave of, trying to kind of convince people that you're sane. Just, agree with them that you're insane, but they're still going to do what you want. And I think that's something to kind of take away also in the world of security. Whenever you deal with people who are not into security and you work in companies and stuff like that, it's just like, just agree with them that you're insane, but they're still going to do what you want, okay? So yeah, so this is what I'm talking about. And we'll apply this slightly to INFOSEC. So, like, when I was introduced, I was told, like, that I'm interested in human attack vectors. And there is an assumption, we all assume kind of like, we all know what human attack vectors are, right? I mean, but do we? I mean, do we really? Because about half a year ago, there was a progress meeting for a defense project that I work on. And initially, so like my participation is testing human security of a particular military device, doesn't matter what it is. And initially, I was forbidden from doing essentially anything. I mean, the target company, who was appraised in advance of what we were going to do, actually forbid us to do open source intelligence gathering. They just said, we don't want that. And we created theoretical attacks. We did still do OSINT because really nobody can forbid me to go to LinkedIn or Facebook. So, so we did it. We created theoretical attack and we had like a field exercise, which by the way, on Monday, I'm going to, this year's field exercise for this same project to Germany. And so we do a field exercise and they kind of push our presentation and push our presentation and push our presentation to the last day. And then like 5 minutes before the presentation, they say, okay, so you can present, but you cannot talk about any of the text or any of the intelligence that you gathered. So literally, our presentation was like the initial slide and then 15 slides that had just like red censored box over them, and then the last slide. So we did do that. And then this year, we have the next progress meeting, and the organizer is like, so can you present your progress? And I'm kind of fully aware that my presentation will be like 3 minutes long. Like, we created all of these attacks, you didn't allow us to do them, so that's our progress. And now they decide that they want to know what the information that we gathered is. So all of a sudden, like, my 3-minute presentation becomes a 45-minute presentation. And the first thing, so we start with, I present them with the information, and I said, so these are the attacks that we propose. And like one of the people in the room, like one of the consortium members, a CEO of a defense contractor from Slovenia, is like, so you're saying that these are like human attack vector attacks? And I say, yeah. And he's like, so, but what is the definition of human attack vectors? And I say, well, I mean, you could Google it, but I mean, I can Google it for you if you want. So I say to them, well, this is, to put it simply, it's those attacks where you achieve access to a system through human means, by, through manipulation, through attacking a human. And the guy's like, yeah, okay, but what do you mean? So, but you do achieve access to a machine, right? And I said, yeah. So he's like, so these are not human attack vectors because, you're attacking the machine in the end. And I said, well, I mean, I'm so sad that you disagree with the official definition, but I mean, what did you want me to do about this? I mean, do you want us to go to Wikipedia and just re-edit it so that it would agree with your worldview? I mean, so this is what tends to happen. It tends to happen, every once in a while, that people will, be cheerfully and, really forcefully incorrect about some stuff that's in security, and they kind of believe that because they disagree with something that it shouldn't be true, okay? And my point here is that, human attack vectors are essentially like aspirin. Everybody sort of understands what it does, but very few people understand how it actually works, okay? And our approach to human attack vectors is sort of colored by, for example, illusory superiority, and let me demonstrate what that is. So, does everybody know what this is? So raise your hands if you do not know what this device is. Okay, fine, thank you. There was one person. It's a ballpoint pen, for your information. Okay, do you know how it works? Raise your hands if you do. Excellent, thank you. So, of course, we all do know, right? And if you're kind of like me, then you're thinking about like little ball at the end of like a plastic tube, and there's like some ink in it, and then like the little ball turns and kind of leaves a trace on the paper. At least when I was doing this exercise, I was at a presentation, and they did exactly this. This is what I was thinking, okay? And the presenter said, but that's not the whole story. He said, so how does the mechanism extends the tip? You know, the little one that you push. I mean, it's the one where you open the ballpoint pen, and you still don't understand how it works. I mean, there's like some cogs or something, and then you push it, and it kind of extends down, but then it locks. I mean, I have no idea how it works, right? So then, we do not know whether like it's gravity that extends force on the ink, or whether there is like some other mechanism. And also, I really don't have any idea of what the ink consists of. And I also don't know what the material the ball is made of, okay? So I'm not trying to put you down. I'm just saying that we kind of feel about many things, we feel like that we know, that we control, or we know more about some things than we actually do. I mean, we sort of understand how a ballpoint pen works, right? We sort of think we do know all about this, but we really don't, okay? And information security is kind of similar, and human attack vectors are kind of similar, because whenever you talk to people, and there will be lots of like phrases where people would be saying like, oh yeah, humans are the weakest link, and stuff like that, or you should be a human firewall or whatever. And this is like, it's a nice phrase, but what does it actually mean? I mean, so it's kind of like we sort of believe we understand it, but not really, okay? So we don't understand how the exploitation of human beings actually works, or not many of us do. What is effective, what is not, which psychological mechanisms elicit compliance in different contexts. We sort of just kind of gloss over this, but we do understand that this is an important thing, right? So avoidance comes in, because since we do think that we do understand human attack vectors, but most of us do not, we do what humans usually do when facing scary things that we don't really understand. We just ignore them, okay? This is evolutionary security, psychology for the win. I mean, this is how, evolutionary psychologists would tell you that in years past, like in prehistory, this is why humans sleep at night. Because, the dark is scary, we don't know what's gonna come out of it, so we close our eyes and hope we'll wake up, okay? So this is why we sleep. And also, this is why small animals sleep through the night, okay? Because really, what you can't control, you just ignore it and hope for the best. And that's kind of similar to actual attitudes in information security, especially when it comes to human attack vectors. Oh yeah, because this is like my, in the last paragraph or bullet point. I mean, there was like an honest-to-God representative of the MOD of a particular country who said to me, I presented, the same thing. This is the same project. So I present our attacks, after the fight about what human attack vectors are. And I present our attacks, and the guy's like, okay, so fine, so you convinced us that human attack vectors, they do exist, and they would be wildly successful. Let's just assume that all of your attacks are successful. No need to do them at all. So what are we going to do about this? And I'm like, dude, this is not how research projects usually work. It's not like we sit in a room, we propose some research, and you just agree that we're going to get positive results. I mean, that's not really all that publishable. I mean, it works for me if we just agree that all I've done is completely fine, so I can basically just kind of collect my check, right? And just move on. But that's how it actually, I mean, these are honest to God real experiences. So we're kind of running out of time, but not really, but I'll just make my last argument. So even security experts, and especially like security experts, are sometimes like slightly misled. So again, like the same project, a year later. So the consortium wants to continue the work, right, on that particular device. And I don't really want to. I don't want to because I kind of feel dirty about this. I'm doing like practically no work at all, and I'm being paid for it. And it's really not worth my time. I mean, I would much rather do something that I'm interested in than just kind of collect some money, you know, from people's ignorance, in essence. So what happens is that we're in a meeting, and we're proposing what the next project will be, like in the same constellation. I'm taking myself out of this discussion because really I'm not interested. But I have a colleague who wants to continue with this. And you know, let's call him Urban, like some random name. And he is not from this faculty, but you know, from another member faculty of the university. And Urban kind of tries to get through to the consortium leader that, you know, security is still important, and the consortium leader is just an ass to them. And at one point in time, Urban, you know, really just blows his gasket. And he just says, look, I mean, I'll just find out where your device is, and if you think like security is so unimportant, fine, I'll just put a bomb underneath it and just destroy it. I mean, let's ignore cybersecurity altogether and I'll just physically demolish it. And I'm like, dude, wait a second. And he's like, what? And I said, so how will you find out where the device is? And he's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, dude, I mean, even security experts, we sometimes believe we live in movies, okay? Because this is the thing. Almost no one in real life says, my sources are telling me that the target will walk through the graveyard at 3:10 a.m. on Thursday and will stop at an unmarked grave that's at the following GPS coordinates. That almost never happens. And also, dude, who is those my sources? This is us. We do not live in a movie. This information does not fall from the sky, okay? This is essentially our job as security experts. And this is where, you know, OSINT comes in and attacks on human attack vectors. Just this particular part. So that some asshole says, so I'm going to find out where your device will be located. How will you find it out if you don't have me? And I mean, it's a constant thing. And it's amazing how even security experts sometimes fall for this. So yes, and this is what we tend to forget. We are the my sources from above. And no one tells us this stuff. This is what we find out, okay? So it would be smart. So this is my last slide, then we can talk if you're interested. If we could just get over ourselves, right? And acknowledge that we all work together towards the same goal, and that everyone's expertise is just that. It's expertise. I mean, I couldn't tell you how often this happens. I mean, in both directions, but mostly like in the STEM direction. I talk to like techno nerds, and then they easily, like, you know, just without a thought dismiss any kind of knowledge that's not specifically technologically based, okay? It's just like, yeah, this is like, it seems simple. I mean, this goes like through all the levels. It gets to the point, so when I was in Cambridge, like at one point in time, I went to my then boss, Ross Anderson, who is like, you know, who is wildly successful, or used to be wildly successful, like security expert, you know, very well known. And he was teaching security at Cambridge. And I said to Ross, so I looked, you know, through all the subjects at the computer lab, computer science subjects. And it seems to me, you know, like most of the experiments that are going to be done, not all of them, but plenty of them will involve like human subjects. There will be like, user studies, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of that will be connected to what users prefer and, design choices, stuff like that. And he was like, yeah, sure. And I said, so, but I can't find like in any of the subjects, I cannot find like any information on how to do like, psychological stats, how to prepare for an experiment with human subjects, how to do any of that. And Ross just looked at me and he was like, yeah, I assume there's a manual. And to me, it was like, exactly this. You think that your subject is, so important that really it requires like, 3 to 5 years of study. But that human squishy stuff, there's probably a manual, right? You don't have to study this, right? It's just too simple. So that, if we just could get past that and understand that, a person who's kind of interested in human attack vectors and a person who's interested in like purely mechanical attack vectors, we both have the same goal of achieving, let's say, unauthorized access, okay? So my life would be so much easier if we would just get on the same page here. And if we could kind of get over our fragile egos and, stop gatekeeping, our knowledge just for ourselves, but just share it, that would be, it would be so much less stressful. Thanks. Are there any questions? We have some more time. Go.
Broadly, what kind of mitigations can you even do against human attack vector vulnerabilities?
Well, so thank you for the question. So the question was, what kind of mitigations can you do against human attack vectors? You can't do much at the point of attack, okay? But that's kind of true for like, most of the incidents. You have to do some prep work. So, and this is the subject of, like at least one of the modules that I'm teaching. What I would suggest is that first of all, we need to stop teaching wrong patterns, okay? To just, my students, I see like some of my students sitting here, so they know like this, this is one of my sermons. But essentially, look, most training, like user education, is done in a way that actively encourages wrong pattern recognition. They would say, okay, so here are like, 10 screenshots of an email, and some of them are fraudulent, and some of them are phishing attempts. Now find the correct one, and people will just click and until they find like, the two that are, phishing, so they will stay at this point and just repeat and repeat and repeat. And as they say, even if you give a monkey a typewriter, eventually they'll write Hamlet. That's how you get people to kind of find like the actual phishing screenshots. Because what we should understand, and what most of us do understand, is that particularly good phishing or particularly good fraud is virtually indistinguishable from the real thing. Everything is exactly the same, except perhaps one thing. Or, perhaps it's a wrong link, but everything else actually adheres to reality. Okay, so these people then find these two phishing attempts, and now they're secure in the knowledge that they now understand what phishing is, right? And to put this into like slightly absurd terms is, now they're very sure that if they get an email that says that their rich uncle died in Nigeria and left them like 10 million pounds, or dollars or euros, whatever, they're now sure that this is fraudulent and this is a scam, okay? So if they get an email that says their rich aunt died, they're not sure anymore, okay? Because it's not exactly the same, and because this is teaching the wrong patterns. So what I want to do, and what I do when I'm teaching like in companies, when I'm teaching like resistance or whatever, is I first spent a lot of time teaching what kind of mechanisms are employed that elicit compliance. So there are certain psychological mechanisms that make people more likely to click on a link, stuff like that. So then in the end, what I do is I just present a phishing email, and I say to people, no need to try to find out whether this is fraudulent or phishing. It's a fact. It's a phishing email. No doubt about this. We know this for a fact. I mean, no need for you to try to find out whether it is or not. But what I'm really interested in is, can you tell me which mechanisms were used, in order to elicit compliance? And, I've spoken for hours before that about those mechanisms. And this is how you mitigate attacks. To get people to understand what kind of mechanics lie behind, let's say a phishing attack. What kind of mechanics lie behind social engineering? What makes social engineering effective? And then to just get people to be self-aware enough to understand what's happening right now. To say, oh, hang on. I know about this mechanism. Somebody's trying to get me to do something, and they're pushing this and this and this button. This might be slightly iffy, okay? So, of course, sometimes people just manipulate you for other reasons. It's not necessarily even evil. So what I tend to propose usually is to just, just turn on your radars at some point in time. So there's one thing that kind of seems iffy. Okay, fine, so now I pay more attention. Oh, there's another thing that seems iffy that's kind of happening. Oh, this is now even more suspicious. So there's 3 or more. I'm sure that somebody is trying to get me to do something that I didn't want, okay? So that's how I would mitigate human attack vectors. Yeah, go.
I have a question. I'm going to form it in cybersecurity terms, but it's probably a question that a lot of normal people have. Let's say, hypothetically, that you have no real education or anything in cybersecurity, but you're just crazy interested in it. Which human attack vectors would you exploit to penetrate the cybersecurity job market in Slovenia?
It really depends. I mean, it also
Hypothetically.
Yeah, sure, of course, yeah. Sure. This is, you have a friend, right, who's interested in this.
Yeah.
Sure. It really depends. So I would say that it depends on the context. So there are some, like whole nations where, cybersecurity experts are really up their asses. So, with those people, I mean, it would essentially be just, I think, like the best possible strategy would be to just not and tell them how brilliant they are constantly. I mean, that would be for specific, like, for example, like Israel. I mean, that for sure that would work. But, in other contexts, I mean, you could probably do, what most of us have done in some ways. You might find somebody who's really good at cybersecurity, but actually a reasonable person, and then just become buddies with them. I mean, the most things that I've learned, I mean, I've spent like most of my time slightly dealing with cybersecurity, but it really took off, when I became smoking buddies with the director of CERT in Cambridge. I mean, there was like 3 people at the university who still smoked, and it was me and him and like another guy. And so I just spent a lot of time with the guy, and he's a nice guy. We're still friends. And he kind of, these people kind of rope you in. So if you want an in, and then all of a sudden there are positions, and all of a sudden you're like the deputy director of CERT and stuff like that. So, this is an honest question. I mean, I know it's probably like not politically correct, but I mean, I would kind of do that.
It's a fair answer.
Yeah. I mean, we all know this. I don't know where in your careers you are, but this is actually what I advise like PhD students to do. I mean, too, because it didn't happen for me, but I have relatives who actually did exactly that. I mean, they would bump into potential supervisors at a conference. They would kind of research conferences, find, at what conference like the person that they wanted to have for a supervisor would be. I mean, they did a presentation, that the supervisor, they would bump into them, kind of like, oh, so sorry, I mean, I really enjoyed your talk, funny, and I really liked your article, like real article, and especially like on page 2 where you say, such and such and this and this. I mean, that was just a brilliant piece of writing. Like, funnily enough, I'm also interested in similar things. So if you have the time, I mean, tomorrow at 2, like in the lecture hall, this and this.
Can I buy you a coffee?
Yeah, exactly. No, this is like you do a presentation. If they show up, that's brilliant. And then after they, after they show up, you're like, they want to go for a coffee. And then you don't talk about the job. You talk about everything else and wait for the person to say, so what are your future plans? Okay?
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah. I have 2 more minutes.
The best way to accept that attacks will happen, that you cannot do, that you are insane, all around, all people are saying just, if you are, what are your recommendations or advices for someone who is responsible for cybersecurity or head of IT, especially if working in public sector for critical infrastructure?
I didn't say that you should just accept that attacks will happen. What I said was that you come to a company like as an external advisor, or even if you're like an internal person, you deal with security and like the governing board looks at you as if you're insane. You say, oh, we need like additional investment of 200,000 euros into training. And they're like, dude. And they treat you like you're insane. At that point in time, stop fighting it. Just say, yeah, fine, this is an insane number, it's an irrational number, but do you realize that I want to lower our losses? Stuff like that. So
real life experience, in 4 years, there's no move, no progress.
I know, but this is kind of a fight that we continue fighting. I mean, we both know how this works. You go to like a governing board, and the first thing they do, there's an advisory board of a huge company, you have a presentation, and before the presentation, they will brag to you about like the latest little black box they bought that's worth 500,000 euros. Nobody knows how it works, but it makes them secure, right? I mean, this is their first thing that they do. And then you spend the next 2 hours explaining to them how insanely vulnerable they still are. And they will say, so what do you do next? What should we do? And you say, I don't know, probably like user training. I mean, since I've just showed you how your users are really vulnerable. And they would say, okay, fine, how much would this cost? And you say, I don't know, like 100,000. And they're like, 100,000, that's really a lot. Dude, you just bought a little black box for 500,000 and you don't know how it works. And that's fine. And then when I'm actually alleviating real issues, you find this problematic. So this is the point in time when you say to the advisory board, look, I mean, a breach will happen. It will happen. I mean, it's a question of time, okay? So what I'm proposing is that instead of, say, losing 10 million, you will lose 1.5 million. So what I'm doing is I'm literally saving you 8 million euros, and you find it difficult to pay me 100,000 euros? Come on. So this is how, and it does work. I mean, that works. I mean, it works better if you're from the outside. Okay, thank you so much.